Wacha nibaki do what jo ni me address the elephant in the room. So jana kuna vile nilikuwa na trend on Twitter, and I was trending on Twitter for like all the wrong reasons. So I was trending on Twitter because of a video that we did. The video ilikuwa ni episode 568 where I hosted it was 3 of the 7 people who are convicted, who are prosecuted, ama who had been suspected of being involved kwa kifo ya rafiki yao. And a few things came from that interview. The first thing was they were not all friends, and I think now the worst thing about people watching clips, so people don't understand that some of these people didn't even know each other. But I feel like the main reason walikuwa na jajiwa this ilikuwa ni juu ya smiling while ati wakiongea juu ya rafiki yao, and that's one of the reasons ile nimechiki wamefightiwa kabisa. And ikitu inakuwaga interesting because if you've lost someone in life, unajuaga how grieving is. So there's no formula. I think movies waga zimetudanganya that grieving will happen in a certain way, especially African movies, because nishaisikiaga hii kitu, and wacha ni digress kidogo, but nishaisikiaga, I don't know where I had this, but I remember hearing it. Ilikuwa ni a casting director wa States alikuwa anasema how they know good actors is that every time that an actor shows up and they tell him that there's a crying scene, and the actor just starts crying, and they're not stopping themselves from crying. They're always like, this is such a bad actor, because in real life anytime that tunalia hatutakagi kulia, inakuwaga ni something we are fighting, nacheki. So in the process niliend up nikidu, because yes, watu waliend up wakitukanwa sana mpaka at some point I felt like I needed to protect them. So what happened is I ended up actually asking them like, are you okay with the interview continuing? Najua. And kadhaa wakaniambia like wako sawa. Najua like they felt like this story needs to be told. And why does the story needs to be told? It needs to be told because ilikuwa ni story ya making bad decisions because of alcohol. So they drank, they were not involved in any way kwa kifo ya beste yao, but walikuwa drunk, and in the process a lot of bad things happened around them, and they themselves ended up in trouble, and this was all courtesy of alcohol. So nika end up nikiangalia, the main thing that people had a problem with was the fact that they were smiling. So Google smiling while grieving, utabaki umepata smiling while grieving is normal, often a complex mix of coping, honoring memories, or masking pain, reflecting grief's messy nature where joy and sorrow coexist. And it's essential to give grace as people carry pain differently. Finding moments of happiness doesn't diminish loss, but carries love forward. It can be a subconscious buffer for overwhelming emotions, a genuine appreciation of happy memories, or a social mask, all valid ways the heart processes loss. Why it happens? Coping mechanisms. Smiling can be a way to manage stress and anxiety, a protective buffer when emotions are too intense to fully feel. Memory and legacy. Remembering happy times can genuinely bring a smile, and finding joy honors the deceased legacy, showing love continues. Then kakwa ni masking pain. A smile can hide internal struggle, a way to show up and maintain composure while feeling broken inside. Emotional complexity. Grief isn't linear. You can't feel deep sadness. You can feel deep sadness one moment, and a fleeting moment of peace or joy the next. Alafu, what it means, you're not alone. Many experience this paradox. It's a common part of the human grieving process. It's not disrespectful. Experiencing joy or smiling doesn't mean you're forgetting or abandoning your loved one. It means you're living, which honors them. Grief has no blueprint. There is no single right way to grieve. Everyone's journey looks different. And with that in mind, it reminded me of this book that I recommended to a lot of people when the book came out. Because when I had a chance to sit down with Oyungapala, we talked about grief. and we talked about losing our loved ones and how we handled it. And Oyunga gave me a very interesting story. And because kwa hii kitabu, the first person that Oyunga talks about is how he lost his dad and how he reacted to it. And he talks about that he had to see other people crying for his dad for him to cry. And that was me. When I lost my dad in 1996, it took me a very long time to cry. I remember when I saw my mother crying. This is a story I've given on the podcast. So mtu asikuwe like, unapatia na hii story kujustify kila watu walidu ama wasi walifanya. No, that's a story I gave on the podcast. Even vile tulikaa chini na Oyunga pala, I talked about that. And that's grief for you. Everyone, maybe, if you're very lucky that you've never lost someone, you'll think there's a way to react. You'll think that, hiyo siku nitatokwa na machozi, nitakuwa na... It doesn't work that way. Grief isn't linear. And I think your comment ndio imenibamba kabisa. Your grief isn't linear. It's very complex. I don't know, because it's not something that you expect. Like for them, because these were 7 students. And out of these 7 students, the ones who truly knew that one student that fell, so wakikam to a total of 8, the ones who truly knew the student that fell were 2. The others had met her on that same day. Ilikuwa alafu story kaisha. So hakuwa namjua. So for watu kwanza kuwabash that they're laughing when their friend died, hakuwa namjua. That's number 1. Alafu, that does not justify that. What this shows is how the human mind works. And this is, I always say it's an evolutionary thing, where if you're to ask me, it doesn't make sense that mothers will lose watoi wao, then like 2-3 years later you find that mother laughing and paka machozi zinatoka. How does it make sense? But that's one of the coping mechanisms. That's the human psyche. Like the human whatever has to continue. So I'll never judge how nini. I don't know why they reacted the way they reacted. I don't think they need to be cancelled. And kwa watu wanashindwa how I invited them. I didn't invite them. Like boja wao ndiye aliniambia like they'd been judged of being guilty. And they'd seen people talk about how guilty and how foolish they are. So they felt like it was a time for them to give their side of the story. And when they reached out to me, I was like, Iko Nini. And we had the conversation. And if anyone who listened to the conversation heard me advising them about alcohol, and I told them my history where, yes, I don't mess with alcohol because I come from a family that has struggles with addiction. So since I come from a family that struggles with addiction, I decided to stay away from alcohol. I went ahead to like advise someone like Louis Osiro. I was telling him about the fact that he's had a procedure on his liver. He should not put his liver through the work of dealing with alcohol. So it was a very, according to me, mature and a very complex conversation. And whoever thought that those smiles were them laughing at the victim is someone who was looking for a reason to get outraged. And I would not be surprised. Just see, not everyone was happy that they were found innocent. Najua. Because watu takaga hiyo story. Najua, it ends up being an anticlimax. Like if you're given this story where there's these 7 kids, there's these 7 university students, yes? And these 7 university students are suspected of having like played a role in the death of their friend. Then that's a very interesting story. Then the truth comes out, and the truth is boring. The truth is they were nowhere near their friend. Only one of them knew. The one who knew the person who fell was somehow close to that person. Only that person knew that that person had fallen. The rest were asleep. They were nowhere. Some even didn't know her. And now CCTV footage comes out and exonerates them. It becomes a very boring story. And no one wants a boring story. Everyone wants, najua, a story that has a villain. And if a story does not have a villain, even movies have shown us that if stories that don't have villains end up being boring. And I feel like that's what has happened. People want to make them villains. And the ones who don't want to make them villains want to make me the villain. It's like, how dare you sit down with this? How dare you? Why don't you worry about the family that's still grieving? Yes, the family is still grieving. and I'm someone who's grieved na najuaga hakuna formula. So that's what I'd say. So why kuna tutauliza like why take down the video then bring it back? I took it down just to put the nini of the fact that I saw, funny enough, on YouTube it was not divisive, but on Twitter it was a very divisive thing. There are people who are saying we want to share the full story because there are lessons to be learned, and there are people who are saying that they want nothing to do with the story. So I felt like, okay, maybe this is divisive, so let me put the context that these people were accused of this heinous crime. Their CCTV footage showed that they were not involved, and since they'd been judged as guilty, they felt like the story needs to be told, and they gave the story on Iko Nini. And so before I reposted, I'll say this. I called like one of my friends who's a podcaster, and I asked them, like, what do you think? Do you think I should still put the story out, or I should not? And he asked me, what was the story about? Because that's going to matter. And anyone who watched part 1 and part 2 will see I kept saying, I do not mean to preach, but I do not mean to preach, but even in the comments, I saw a lot of people who walikuwa niambia that thank you for trying to talk to them and trying to show them that celebration through excessive drinking is not the only way to celebrate. So that was my intention. So so I felt like I needed to react to that, but I was cancelled on Twitter, so I don't know if I'm going to get cancelled here, but you can let me know, like, what are your views? Should we tell such stories, or should such stories just be left because they are too bad? Should we tell people the story that yes, you might get used to jumping from one place to another, but never do it, because especially don't do it when you're not sober? Although, according to me, never do it, even if you're sober, because accidents happen. That's why they're called accidents. Accidents happen. So don't do all that. So I don't know what to think, but it was a very divisive story. But I decided that it was a story that needs to be told. It's a story that needs to be heard. And it's a story, that story is so multi-layered that anyone who watched it learned something. Someone told me that the thing that they learned from that was the price of freedom. There's someone who told me that right now, when I face a case in Mombasa, where the freedom is at stake, and they understood what that lady Mora said, where she'd use anything to stay free. And so there was that. Other people said it was a good lesson on the dangers of excessive drinking. And others felt like it was a good story to just show that they were innocent, but they were judged harshly by the community. Everyone thought they were guilty. And so yeah, I don't know what you got from the story, but it's about the human experience. And not all stories are good stories. Some stories are sad, some stories are horrific, some stories are scary. But all these stories need to be told. But they need to be told in a way that's not offensive. And that's one of the ways that I think I did. Anyone who watched the interview, so even when all those details were being described, I knew. I remember like nikifanya hiyo interview, nini wakismile saa zingine, nilikuwa hapo zile za anyone who's never dealt with grief, ama anyone who's never seen how grief is messed up and does not have a formula will take offense, because they'll be like, why are they smiling? They have to be happy. But not every smile is happiness. Not every smile is happiness. That's all I can say. And let me take this opportunity to remind Strength and Sorrow, a very good book about loss, reflections on the ones we lost, from Oyunga Pala. This is what Oyunga told me. To Mwafreeka, what an honor it was to come to Iko Nini. Bless the work, hold the torch. And Itap Ruth, 12th of October 2025. OP Kitabu will show you one thing. I'd still recommend it. It's going to show you there's no formula to grief. I know we expect people to behave in a certain way, But the last example I'll give you is Raila died less than 2 months ago. People are very sad. Right now you'll find some of those people smiling. Does that mean that they stopped loving Raila? You might find Winnie laughing. That's her dad. Winnie unakufaje? Unalafaje na budako alikufa less than 2 months ago? And I think this book captures all that. It shows you there is no right way. And but with that, of course, nakuaga ni Iko Nini. Kwa umejam na mimi, jiachilia hapo kwa comments. Baki umeniambia vile unanichukia na some of the comments nilipata on Twitter zilikuwa interesting. Like, what was I told on Twitter? Niliambiwa vitu kama standard 2 dropout. Hiyo standard 2 dropout ilikuwa ni mimi. But kuna mtu aliniambia nini? I was told something like, how landed is Mwaf? Kwa msanii anaitwa Josh 001J. What was his major in college? I'm still puzzled at how he thought to call those stupid kids to a podcast, knowing that nothing good come of it. Podcasts need to be regulated. Quacks be saying anything. Then come be a class 2 dropout. Because then kuna mwingine kunda Wanjiro Akinyi Muga has to be a fake name. Very unprofessional if you ask me. Podcasts nowadays are run by people who are barely educated. Can be barely educated. That's Twitter for you. And that's why all that outrage. Because anyone who watched the interview, I'll notice one thing. All those kids didn't know each other. All those students didn't know each other. That's number one. Number two, wange notice. They were just giving the experience. They themselves had gone through a traumatic experience. When you're being charged with something as horrific as that and you are not involved, when you are 100% innocent, is horrifying. And for people to expect you to react in a certain way is maybe to show either their naivety or something else. But vile nimesema, jetilia kwa comments and Iko Nini. Ni the festive season. So, wacha nikuulize jo. Hii time yote umekuwa ukisikia Mwafa anasema Lemfi. Usha try Lemfi? Kama uja try, baki umejua kuwa Lemfi iko na the most competitive exchange rates. Alafu pia unabaki umepay directly kwa pay bill na till numbers zile ziko Kenya. Alafu pia unabaki umesend ama umereceive do, whether uko US, uko UK, uko Canada ama uko UAE. So nangoja nini? Changamka, tumia promo code Iko Nini, alafu utabaki umepata pia a $20 sign up reward on your first $50 transaction. So nangoja nini? Changamka, ingia Lemfi, International Payments for Everyone. Iko Nini.